Hey, Celine, how's it going? I'm great. I arrived at GDC yesterday and just barely checked it out. I can't wait to go see everything all week.
Okay, that sounds. People are saying they're having a little bit trouble with the audio. Let's double check. Guys, can you hear the audio now?
Check, check.
Okay, I'm hearing myself, so maybe that problem got fixed. But if you have problems, please let me know and we'll be happy to say it for you. Since there was no audio, I'll quickly repeat my intro. Effect House is at GDC, which stands for the Game Developer Conference, and we're in San Francisco. So if you're in the area, definitely come visit our booth. We have a fun activation using Effect House gaming effects, the viral ones that everybody's been competing for. It is impossible to beat this game. So if you come by, you'll be able to meet our top creator, Jonathan, who's also an ambassador, and he's going to give a talk on how to create an amazing game effect on TikTok. I'll try to see if I could either record the session or share the session with you guys in some way, since he's going to share some mega tips. But I am very glad that you guys are here. Even if you can't come in person, please post a video of yourself using your favorite gaming effect, and uh, let's embrace the gaming AR month that we're about to hit. Okay, audio is good now. Sounds great. Thank you so much, guys. August, how have you been this weekend? Did you do anything fun?
Yeah, I've been exploring San Francisco. I've been doing a lot of rock climbing. Yeah, just
Ooh,
checking out San Francisco and GDC as much as I can.
okay. I think you mentioned that you have a fun template that you would like to share with us.
Yeah, so a lot of times we show off these complicated, crazy templates, but this one is pretty simple and straightforward and can work with a lot of trends to kind of make like fun, simple effects that anybody
Mm-hmm.
can figure out. So it's called Choose Five, and when you take a look at it, it's basically just a brush-based effect. So when I use the brush, it will draw this interesting brush with an outline, and then each of these images here is separately loaded into these different options here. So we have 12. So if you wanted to like make circle your five top favorite movies, you could just put like the movie like posters in these or something like that. This has been like a really big trend where people will just upload green screen, upload an image with a brush and just draw. So this just takes that out of it, and you can make something that people can reuse, so they don't have to go find the image and download it to do the trend. So this is just kind of more enabling a trend that we already saw and turning it into a template so that you can make a circle five for any type of thing. One thing to point out is that the stretch mode for each of these images is fill and cut. So if you upload any image that's just like not the perfect ratio, it'll still make it fit into this frame. So that's really helpful for when you're making something that's like topic based and you're just downloading a bunch of images that are just like all different shapes. You don't want to have to bring them all into Photoshop and make them all square. So this way, you can easily just place them in there. Um, there's some different settings in the visual script you can mess with, but I think sticking with the 12 or maybe 15 is the way to go. Uh, yeah, what kind of topics would you use for this, Celine?
You know, I always have so many inspiration for fun games. But this one, who drew the assets? They're so adorable. They're like baby animals.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these animals I don't even know what they are, but this cute little red panda here, that's my favorite one.
You know what this effect would be
It's
really good for? I bet so many people would use it if you create this effect. I think it is the K pop choose your bias effect. Like you have so many K-pop members, and out of them you get to circle like your bias, and then I bet so many people would be like, "Oh my gosh, it's so I can't choose. All of them are my favorite," and have so many fun reaction videos. So that is my first inspiration, and the second of it is maybe like your favorite food. I don't know. This has so many possibilities. Is there any fun things that you've seen?
It's mostly like movies, Oscar movies. Like anytime somebody would pick something in pop culture, uh, I feel like they start using this kind of trend to like predict
Mm.
what other people will pick.
Mm-hmm.
But it could also be like your favorite childhood like toys. And then it's just like all these random things that you forgot existed. And you're just like, oh my God, Stretch Armstrong with the goo inside.
Yeah, I feel like it would go really great for basically all of the existing randomizer effects. Maybe one advice that I can have for people is to go back in time and see what was popular and what was used by a lot of people, and then you said like, oh, I guess this is what a lot of people want to know, and then bring that into this new effect that is a totally different type, but you can use the same themes. So maybe we can that is a good way to merge the previous trends with the new type of effects.
Yeah, totally. One
Okay,
other thing that I mentioned before we finish this one, if
mm-hmm.
you draw with the brush very quickly, like you'll notice that there's these dots where the brush kind of breaks. And this happens in basically any brush that has a low brush density. And so that's the number that we've exposed in this subgraph here. So you don't have to go inside of the subgraph and find that. You can directly edit it here. And it goes up to 100. The higher the number, the more performance it takes. So it might start slowing down if you put too many and you have a lot of stuff going on. I usually recommend it depends on your brush size. So since this is a pretty thick brush, you could probably get away with 40, but I would say just give it a test yourself. Now this is me going really fast on the screen, and you can see there's only a little bit of like dotting or whatever you would want to call that. So if you really care about that and it matters a lot for your effect, you can pump it up higher. If it doesn't really matter and you just don't want actual breaks in the line, then just find that sweet spot. But definitely test it out, because the size of the brush means that like the larger the brush is, the less brush density it needs to connect the dots. So yeah, just play around with that and make sure that you get it to work how you want.
Okay, that makes sense. We have a question from our Discord. WoMe1638 is asking, hi, I have a multiple assets triggering colliders event, but I want to use some assets as bounding box so that my assets are restrained to the screen size, and I don't want my bounding box to trigger collider events. Is there any way to restrain collider events from happening on certain collisions, or is there a way to only trigger collision events only when two specific items are in contact?
Yeah. So let's open a new project and oh, this is for 3D colliders. Yeah. Let's open a new project and check it out.
While August is opening up his new file, I want to ask you guys, what is your favorite game effect? Let us know in the comments.
I'm just setting up a basic scene with some cubes, and we can add some rigid bodies. So how do we want to do this? Let's put like a third cube down here. I just want to demonstrate being able to drop an object onto one object and then it tumbles onto the other, and we only do something with one of the collider events. So I guess this one would be here and this one would be here. So for all of these, actually, I'm just going to set up this cube with a rigid body. And we can give it a box collider. and we can just keep it the same scale. And then realistically, since we did that, we'll just duplicate this cube. Duplicate, duplicate. And then for this one, maybe I'll scale it up a bit. And then for this one, put it over here, maybe put this one over here. And then I think for cube 2, we should make it static so we can kind of control this little experiment a little better. And if we restart, we'll see there's going to be one collision. And then for this cube 1, we should move it over and this one over. Basically, we want one cube to topple, to hit the other cube and then hit the other one. Okay, so that will happen. So then we can track this cube 1. This is our, we'll just call it our player. That's just our main object. And we'll call this one the ground. And then this one is our, we'll just say that this is a other object. So something your player can interact with differently than it would interact with the ground. Okay, so I think we would want to track a collision event. So the first thing I'll do is the player's collider components. Get box collider. And just remember, whenever you're using collision events or whenever you're using like a collider, basically anytime you see component, JS script component, it's best to just always go to the object and click this pin to graph button and just get the component directly rather than using the selector. Yeah, just there's some known issues with the JS script component. So just try to avoid using that in the selector box. Okay, and for the collision event, I believe this start is just a a start. So you can just, anytime you want it to start sensing collision events, you just do that. Okay, so now it should be using that and outputting an event whenever you start colliding with an object. So let's just loop through this. Okay, and then for next, we're just going to enter this for loop, and then in order to do a for loop, we're going to want to get array info. So this just tells us how many objects are in the array. So we can go through the correct loop. And then with this, we want to know let's see, get, or no, there's a physics collision info. That's what it is. Yeah, because you'll notice collision result. Oh, it's an array, right? So get item from array. So then this will take the index and it will take in the array. You have to make sure that it's contact info array. Just move that out of the way. Actually, let's move all of this up. Okay, so now we're getting the array of all of the collision events each frame. And then from there, we can plug this in to get all of this different info out of the collision event. So now for each of these events, we want to do something. So basically we're filtering out collision events that we don't want to actually do anything. So basically our ground is going to be that bounding box that you're talking about. So you would also put like walls, and those would also count. So let's see, how can we do this? We can get the scene colliding object scene object. So one way to do it is if equal. So then you have this scene object and then ground. Now this would be the most basic way to do it. So if you only had one object, just the ground, you could do this, and in the body, you just do this. So if it's equal to ground, you would probably not want to do it. So you would just use the false, or you would invert this. By the way, you can invert things by just adding a not node. So then you would be saying, like, if this is anything but the ground, but then if you have multiple objects, you would probably have to do more complex logic. So for more complex logic, let's see, can we get name? I swear there was a way to get the object's name. Scene object info. Okay. So this is how I might do it. So you could go through, so with this logic that I put before, I think you would have to do an OR with each object. So you would have a ground, another ground, and then you would have all of these ORs, and you would do this complex logic that gets kind of annoying. Every time you add another object that you don't want to collide with the collider, you would have to add another one. Or you could do this, where you take in the scene object, you get the name of it, and then compare that instead. So let's see. We'll basically do this same thing, but with a string. So the name here, and then basically you're saying it's not ground. But instead of ground, now we want to say non-event collidable, and just kind of sacrifice our naming a little bit, because really we want the name to describe each object ideally. But if we can greatly simplify our logic, then we can just name this what it is. We're using it as some sort of object to collide, where it doesn't interact. Wait, so you can't type a string into here. Oh, no, you can. So non-event collidable. Or, if I had more time, I would come up with a better name. And then instead of each adding another one for each object, now you can just duplicate and just remove this one. And as long as your hierarchy doesn't get super confusing by having a bunch of these everywhere, now any object that doesn't have this name can cause a collision event. And then if we if we really want to, let's see, how do we do this? It's hard to test this, because with a for loop, all of the loops happen within one frame. So anything that you write to a variable or anything like that will just overwrite itself each loop. So for instance, let's see. Let's create a 2D scene object, and we'll just go into 2D and add text. This is how you create 2D text instead of using the default 3D text. And then we'll take this text and we'll say set text. And so when it's not a non-event collidable, using the true, I'll try to zoom in a bit. I don't have my monitor with me at GDC. But yeah, so we're setting this text, and we'll just set it to the name of the object. And so it should basically never, you can see as it's colliding with the ground. I'll even move another ground over. Yeah, none of the collisions when it's touching this non-event collidable are changing this text. Notice that it did change as soon as it hit that other object, but then it will never trigger this set text otherwise. So this is kind of your event that's happening when you're colliding, is we're just changing the text. So this is like a just a very simple kind of debug setup that I have here. And this is the type of thing I would make before I make any sort of game usually, just to double check that everything works exactly how it. Yeah, I think, if you wanted to take it one step further, I'll add this extra logic, and then you just let me know if you want me to explain it, but I can we can share this project afterwards. Basically, if the object is a ground object, instead of an other object, so it's a bounding kind of object, I'm just making it take this collision point, which is the position of where the object collided, and the collision normal, which is the direction facing out. So like an arrow pointing away from the wall of the object that you hit. So using these and then multiplying the force by a lot, it'll basically turn into kind of a no, not ping pong, pinball kind of scenario where if you hit a ground object, it'll bounce the object away. So that's kind of an interesting way to use it, I think. And just like really feeds into this sort of this is basically what I would use it for, this collision info. Otherwise, if you didn't know how to do this, you might not know other ways to use this collision info node. So I'll just say 100 on all of these. And we'll just see if it actually, if there's anything that I'm missing. Oops. And is local impulse. I want to take that away. You can see it kind of floating away. Maybe the impulse isn't strong enough. But yeah, I would probably mess with the collision point and try to figure out if that's at the correct place. Because it might be the point on this ground thing. Huh. But yeah, I think you would have to tweak it a little more to figure out how to get like the strong enough force and the correct placement. Or we can just say position is 0, 0, 0 and local. And then as you can see, it just rockets right off when it hits that edge. I think maybe that's the better way. And then if we take this other one away, we'll see if it just bounces straight up. Okay, I guess it doesn't. Huh. Interesting. I wonder if we rotate this. Okay, yeah, I'm just screwing around with some ideas here of how of like, I think we rarely talk about the collider events, so I just wanted to share some more. Hmm. Yeah, totally.
Hello, hello.
I can hear you.
Okay. I was just telling the IT lab that unfortunately, a lot of the times, the reason why a country isn't added is not dependent on the community manager at all. We all want to like provide you with the resources and get you guys monetized, but it is really out of the control of the community managers. So what was really helpful last time is if you go to our community forum and give write like, hey, I am from blah 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 country and I hope that my country is included in my region. If it gets a lot of upvotes, I think we can use that to tell the team like, hey, there are all these amazing creators in this region and we would really like to expand. So I would recommend that you go to community.effecthouse.com to get an upvote. Secondly, for Isno Felix saying, I have an open case at TikTok because I have no option on my TikTok account to change the country. I would reach out to the support for that. And there you can find the support email link in our Discord page. Okay, we've been getting a couple more questions. Wasif is asking, I have one question. If base rigid body is moving left and right, and another rigid body drops over it, and then it slides and drops, but I wanted to keep it sticking on the base of the base rigid body and move along with it. That's a really interesting idea. It kind of like you throw something and then it pushes the base rigid body as well. I think if this was possible, there would be so many fun games like ice sledding or trying to latch on with a sticky hand. Let's ask August if this is possible.
Yeah, I think anytime you want to connect rigid bodies, you from what I've seen, you basically have to use the joints. I think I understand what you're saying. So as for an example, like the sled thing, like you're moving one rigid body and you want another one to follow along and basically kind of be attached, loosely attached. Okay. Yeah, we could use joints for that, I think. Yeah, so here's the final project. The other one, I just wanted to share. I'm going to close it, but I can share it in the Discord later. One of the things that I was forgetting was the collision normal. You want to multiply it by a negative number so that you get the force out away from the object instead of the force of the original collision going into it. So now we have this area where the cube only bounces off certain objects. Yeah, pretty nice. I think you could do a lot with that. Now let's open up a fresh project so we don't butcher this one. Okay, so I'll create a sphere with a rigid body. Oops, not a dynamic chain. Although a dynamic chain is another way to connect physics objects. Okay, so I have a sphere collider, and we'll just add, okay, want to put a rigid body on this as well. So we'll add a rigid body too, and then we'll duplicate it. So we have two objects with rigid bodies. And let's see. This is always the challenge. What do I want to do to like make only one of them stay on screen or make them not fall off the screen, basically. Okay, so I guess I'll make this one static. And then we have this whole list of joints. Now, spring joint, I think, works pretty well. I think in the end, when I'm making a game, I need more control. So I always end up, no matter what I'm doing, I always end up using a point joint. There are uses for spring joints and fixed joints and stuff like that. I think they're just maybe a little more like, I don't know, maybe based on the, like when you need to like have hair that moves in a certain way or something visual. Whereas for games, I like point joints. It's basically a ball and socket joint. Seems to work for most scenarios. So now we have this frozen sphere at the top, and we have this other object that we want to connect. I think all we would do is select the connected body in the spring joint. So the bottom object is the one that I'm putting the spring joint on. And then the thing that you have to do, you can make this screen bigger. You want to move this anchor. You see this orange thing that disappears when it goes inside objects. Oh, this is on the static one. Okay. So I didn't realize my static one was the bottom one. Okay, so basically you want to match this up with the anchor of your object. So it's going to basically be the center of the circle, or maybe you want to put it on the very bottom of the sphere. And then your connected anchor is going to be basically the center of, or maybe the top of your other sphere. So then they're kind of connected like that, and they'll, if we refresh, you'll see it just kind of sits here. So let's do something to give it a little motion to kind of get more of an idea of how these are connected. Let's do a finger touch. Okay, so finger touch, and then we'll do screen to world. We're gonna turn this touch position into something that exists in the 3D world. So we'll just give it, let's see, Z depth 0. We'll just say 40. And the reason that I choose 40 is because if you ever look at the camera, it's 40 depth positions on the Z axis away, 40 units away from the center. And our objects are basically around the center. So, and then you just select the 3D camera when you're doing screen to world. And then this should map it where this position would be at that 0 depth, 40 units away from the camera. So when we're doing this, that should give us the right position to move this static object. We'll put this on top since it is the one on top. Makes more sense. And then we'll just change this position. Since it's static, you can change the position, but once it's not static anymore, you'll have to use forces to move your object. Just keep that in mind. And then on stay, we'll just set this position. So now I can drag this object around, and you can see that there's another object behind it. So like there's all kinds of different physics games, but if you move this top one around with force or physics, that other one will kind of stick around in the same way. And it will collide. So you can see, like when it swings far enough to like hit the other one, it'll stop swinging. So then it's kind of like if you ever looked at the dynamic beads template, that's how dynamic beads template works. So it's just got a bunch of these joints. On dynamic beads, though, it's a point joint. So the damping ratio, let's see. So the tolerance will be how much spring it has in it, I believe. So if we do this, you can see it kind of bouncing around a lot more. And then damping ratio will be like how quickly that tolerance comes back to just being like stiff. So how the length will change. So probably you'll see this tolerance a lot more when you're moving it in the direction of the spring rather than side to side like I'm doing. So let's just take this. Oh yeah, there you go. Seems like that tolerance, wow, that last 0.9 to 1 is like once the spring gets really stretchy. So definitely try all the numbers. So this could be really good if you it doesn't really matter if your object varies in the distance from the other object. But this feels much more fun than the kind of rigid point joint if your main game kind of mechanic has the object kind of moving around like this. Could maybe even get an orbiting game going. But yeah, I think there's a lot of really fun stuff you could do with this. I think maybe the parts that you need to kind of understand are the anchor and the connected anchor. And you just need to remember to look in this scene view to see where those orange boxes are and arrange them. Like I basically put the orange boxes almost on top of each other. So that's why my springs are so connected. But if we drag it down like this, then we can mess with that tolerance and it won't be so clamped on the high end. Maybe it will.
I was going to say when you were earlier when you had the resistance really it looks like you're dribbling.
Yeah, it
Do
does.
you think it's possible that maybe you can connect that to a body tracking, like hand tracking, and then the bottom ball would be basketball, and then you will be a dribble king?
Yeah, the nice thing about that is if we put a hand tracker, I think, is hand tracker 3D or okay, yeah, it is. Okay. So we could say hand center distance to screen. I think distance to screen would be 40. It's just an estimate, but yeah, since it only gives like the 2D coordinates, I think you want to estimate that. It's hard to say. So if I were to do this, I would put that sphere on here, and then I would just cut off this update here. Oh, I just added the hand tracker. I didn't actually do anything. Oh no, I didn't put this as a child. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot of fun stuff you could do with this, I think.
Oh my gosh, that also looks like a yo-yo. You can make it instead of like a spear, a bunch of cards or fish or birds so that it follows you around. This actually has so many awesome possibilities. I'm actually even surprised that not a lot of people have created an effect with this.
Yeah. And like you could attach it to your head or hand or, other places as well. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
Oh
I
my
feel like
gosh,
I have
have you
an
seen one of those TikTok dieting things where you have like a hula hoop thing and then you spin and then if you lose some weight until waist becomes smaller and smaller. I'm just thinking like there's so many things that you can connect to this to, but it could be like a hula hooping or around your head. You can like move your head like this. This is so fun, and there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, it would be fun to have a little hackathon with just like simple projects like this and just see what people turn them into.
Wow, I think that is a fantastic idea. Maybe we should have a hackathon where you give like a very basic concept like this, like you give this project file and then ask people like, hey, in 2 hours, everyone is going to present their creation, and it will be so fun how people are able to use this in different ways and have different interpretation.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, wow. That is such a fun idea.
Yeah, we should do
Okay.
that sometime.
Cloves is saying hand tracker is not 3D. I think I made this exact test you're trying to do. Joints are really amazing.
Yeah, if you want 3D hand tracking, like if you like what Cloves is talking about is this value that I put here. This is basically the hard-coded Z value. Oh, wait, didn't I change it to 40? It's like the hard-coded Z value. So if I move my hand anywhere on the screen, it's always going to be at wherever I put this. So you can see I'm just moving it with this. So like that makes it kind of hard to do the depth. And if you need depth, then I think the only other option would be, well, there's a couple options, but the only real option would be using Body Avatar Drive, and that will give you depth, but then the user has to show their whole body to activate it. So yeah, there's not, I would say this is probably the better of the two options because it's a lot lighter as well. But yeah, different solutions for different games for sure.
If somebody were to drop something and they wanted to completely like stick to the cube, how would somebody go about doing that?
Yeah, if you wanted to drop something and make it stick to the cube, let's try something like that. This will be another collision event demo. So let's make a cube, and this will make it stick. So here we go. Add a box collider, add a rigid body as well. I think we'll just keep it static, but sometimes physics behaves a bit more nicely when you've got rigid bodies on everything. So I always just start with rigid bodies, and then once everything's working, I remove the ones I don't need and make sure that everything still works. That's my kind of workflow. So cube here, we're going to make it sticky. So we want to, when something collides with this, we want stuff to stick to it. So the cube is going to be the one with the events, in my opinion. Let's go for it. Collision event. So this time, yeah, we'll pretty much do the same kind of thing we were doing before, but now we just did it already, so it's fresh in our minds. So let's just go back through it pretty easily. Create another for loop. And then array info for the array length. I'm going to be able to like sing this in the form of a song by the end of this live stream. And then we'll get collision event info.
Click on the collision info and add the Z depth. Guys, don't judge me. There's a reason why I'm not a music major.
That's great. Okay, I'm just connecting everything up to make sure that we can just grab each of these events. And now we have our collision info event. This will do a for loop, so every object that collides with it, every frame will get this, and we'll just say colliding object. It doesn't matter what it is. We're not filtering any results, so we don't have to do any other crazy stuff. We'll just Oh, get component by type. Can we get rigid body yet? Let's see. Okay. So we can't get the rigid body, but we can, I wonder if we can set is static. Okay, we can have the source here. Yeah, so I don't know if there's any way currently. I would just set the object to is static. Oh, weird. This cube is like all over the screen. So let's see. Is there any way to make this rigid body the selected thing in there from here? Colliding object, scene object. So, I mean, if you were desperate to make other objects stick to this one object in this way, you could just use name or a list of all of the objects in the scene that could stick to it, and just do like a list of if statements basically, and then if it is this object, then we would have, for instance, here I'll just do one, but then it becomes kind of annoying to set up the rest. So we'll get rigid body of this sphere. We would say if equal, and we would use scene object. And there could be a better way, but I really can't think of what that would be. And then we would take this scene object and we would say specifically, we would choose this sphere. And then if it's that, then we have this specific setup here. And then if we wanted to make sure that other objects could stick to it, we would have to basically copy paste this. And then in here, let's move this over so that it lines up. We would do the same thing here, and we would change this object to the other ball. And then, well, the other ball is already static, so that's not really going to do anything. But let's just say we have a second one here. And then this one can have its own joint. So we'll just do this same kind of deal where it's connected to that other one. So the connected body would be sphere. And then we'll just do this same setup. So this is kind of good review of what we did before, right? Just make the orange boxes kind of line up. So that's where the springs start and end are. So then if I restart, we'll see we have a couple. And then I should be able to, since they're not like parented to each other, I should be able to set it up so that they can each stick to this. So then basically we want our false statement. So if it's not sphere, then we want to, as you can see, we already put sphere 1 here. We want to also put sphere 1 here. Okay, this is the wrong sphere. This is why naming in your hierarchy is so important. Okay, so now either one of these, if it's going to check, is it this sphere? And then it's going to make it stick to the box. And then if it's not that sphere that's colliding, then it's going to check the other one. So anytime anything collides with it, it's going to do this whole flow. So once you have like 10 objects that could stick to it, it's going to get kind of crazy. Let's refresh it so you can see how the sticking works. So dangle it over here and then stick. And then you can see it's still attached to that other object with the spring, which is really cool. But then if you could move it Yeah, I think the spring is holding that one up, but it'll also stick. We just have to.
August, this one is crazy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's getting like more and more complicated just in one live stream. It's so funny.
You just need to do a masterclass on colliders and gaming effects. This is absolutely phenomenal. I can think of so many games using this. Maybe like a fly trap and fly. So if you like move it too close to the fly trap, it gets caught and then you can't escape anymore.
Yeah, maybe we could finally catch those crazy cars that keep spinning out into parking spots.
Crazy parking. Yeah, but as you mentioned, I think it is so crazy how we originally started out with a simple concept, but then we keep adding and adding more components, and we're getting this crazy awesome effect. So props to you all for asking amazing questions and August for executing them.
And
Gold brain.
also, I mean, take a look at the visual scripting. I'm zoomed out right now, but you can see it's not really that crazy. Each part is very important, so it's like pretty dense, I would say. But overall, like there's not too many steps to it to get to something that's, this interactive and crazy. You can you could just study one of these until you really understand it, and you would probably level up a lot by like learning how to use each piece of the engine.
We are getting some questions. Oh my gosh, people love colliders, I guess. Thank you, August, for creating this template. Can you please do a cube moving left and right and then ball drop and stick and move along? I think it's a combination of a lot of the things we created today. Or if you don't want to like demonstrate it from the start, just explain overall logic how they can use the learnings that they've learned today and create something like this.
Yeah, so it was the cube moves along and like picks up objects because it's sticky kind of thing.
Just left and right, and then the ball drop and stick and move along. Oh, so I think they're saying like the cube is on the top and then it's moving from left to right, and then when you click, the cube drops and sticks to the bottom one.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So,
So I guess like imagine if you have like a puck on ice and then you throw another puck or like you drop another puck and then it like affects the bottom puck in some way.
interesting. So then they would both still be moving then, or yeah, so with this cube example I did, I think it only works because the cube isn't moving.
Mm.
Since you're just making the other objects stop moving.
Can
So
you do a Velcro? Like I'm just thinking in reverse. Like right now you are picking up this object, but do you think you can swing and kind of like Velcro the bottom cube and then it will move with the top one? I don't know. I might be asking for
uh,
too much, but
So one of the things that I hope we get in the future, I would really love to see that would make this kind of stuff a lot easier is this connected body. If we were able to pin this to the graph, then we could change which object the joints are connected to. So like while you're like playing the game, if one object hits another, you can turn on this spring joint and attach the objects together by a joint. So then they would become kind of Velcroed together. Another way to do that. So one way I've done in some experiments is kind of complicated, but it gets the job done. So essentially the idea is so if you want something to not have a joint and then have a joint connected to other objects, what you need is a ghost object. And what I mean by ghost object is, let's just
is it
duplicate.
scary? Is it haunted? Is
It's a
that
little
why it's a
scary.
ghost object? Ooh.
I mean, I can't sleep at night most nights, but it will get the job done. So this ghost object, I don't know. I don't think you need a collider. And your rigid body is going to be static. The reason for the rigid body is just so that joints can connect to it. Yeah, so then you'll have your, man, this gets a little tricky. So you'll connect your object that you want to be like connected to the ghost object. And I would actually use a point joint, so we can just turn the tolerance all the way down. So we'll say ghost object is here. Yeah, and then we don't have the collider, so then it won't collide. And then we'll just say player object, because this is going to be our main object, basically. We'll turn off the hand and the other sphere, and we'll turn off, I guess we'll turn off this other sphere too. And then, so our player object is going to be connected pretty rigidly to our ghost object, right? So our ghost object, we're just going to have the position, set position, and then we're just going to have this on an update so that it's constantly being set to whichever object we want it to follow. So it's going to be like a little ghost that follows some other object, right? So actually, we'll just turn this off, and maybe we'll use the hand tracker. So get position. So if we do this, you can see it's not actually a child object of the hand tracker, but it will follow the hand tracker. And I think this ghost object also, I'll turn off the mesh renderer. So then we know that our spring object is there. So to make this spring a little tighter, I think since they're directly overlapping each other, we just want to take off this 5 and 5. And then they should both be connected at their center, and it'll be much tighter. This is also a time to use like a fixed joint or a point joint if you want it to exactly follow and not have some kind of spring. But yeah, this is interesting because let's create another object. Okay, we'll just call this hidden anchor. This would be like the other puck, maybe. So when I'm, yeah, I guess this would be another thing to use the collision for. So let's say instead of let's get rid of the cube altogether for this example, and we'll just say our player object. Okay, our player object, we'll just get the sphere collider here. Oh, right. That cube was the only box collider, but this is a sphere collider. So we're basically saying anything that collides with our player object, gonna do this whole thing again, if you remember. And then this is, yeah, so we don't have to worry about this anymore. I already saved the project, so don't worry too much about that. I'll save this one as a separate project. So I think what we would want to do is create a variable, and this variable could be a scene object. And then that would let us set and get which object we're stuck to. And I'll just call this ghost target. So this is where the ghost is constantly following. And then we'll get, and I'll just put a set in here because we're gonna use it in a moment. But yeah, this ghost target, now in this get position transform, now we can plug this in. Oh, it needs a transform. Okay. One more step. Get component by type, transform. Okay, now with these connected, we can get the position of our ghost target, which is a variable target. So we're tracking the position of some variable object. And then over here, whatever this object hits is the new ghost target's position. So I'll just do this and then scene object. So I don't know why I wanted it to be a hidden anchor. It can just be an anchor. We'll just turn it on and it just exists over here. Let's see, why would it be blinking like that? Oh, right. So we were setting the position to that is what we were doing. So we need to start the ghost target. We need to make sure that it's set at the beginning to whatever we want it to be. So the ghost object would be the hand tracker. That's what we started with, right? So that's the default in the variable setup here. So now when the effect starts, when I restart it, oh. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Let's just delete some stuff that we're not using. We're not really using this. Okay, so our ghost object and our player object. Okay, so our player object is connected to our ghost object to always follow it. And then when it collides with something, let's just make sure our ghost object, it doesn't have a collider. Our player object does have a collider.
Okay, let me sidetrack your beautiful brain for 1 second. You keep saying ghost object and like a player object, and it just seriously reminds me of Mario Kart when you're racing around against the ghost of like the last round's high performance. Okay, carry on, carry on. I just had to lighten the mood.
Totally. Cool. I'll delete this extra logic at the top that we're not using anymore as well. Okay, so in this loop, whenever a collision happens, it's switching to the other target. For some reason, this anchor, it probably should be static. That might help solve our problem. Okay, so now we've got, so I don't know why. Oh, okay. It's because it's on a spring and okay, so ghost object. So these should be down here, right? I'm curious why as soon as the effect starts, it's going nuts. It's absolutely going bonkers. And this is one of those, yeah, maybe let's see what happens if we just don't start this yet. Okay, so it almost seems like it takes one frame to stabilize or something. So let's just add a wait for seconds just to get through this, and then maybe I can share any knowledge that I find out later if I find out any reason that this was happening. So we'll just put like a low number. We can even put like half a second. It doesn't really matter. And now this will have a second to stabilize because it is physics. It's simulating physics. So, the first few frames where everything's kind of settling can get kind of crazy sometimes. But now you can see if it feels like it's parented to my hand, right? And now if I collide them, now it's parented to this. You know what? It's kind of hard to see. I'll just make the anchor smaller and then you'll be able to see. Okay. Oh no. So I think the object, it takes a frame or two for the hand tracker to start tracking. And so that's why it kind of goes crazy during that first moment when the hand tracker is still warming up. Okay, so now you can see if I touch it, my object will then start just following that object instead. So this is kind of a way to make a physics object kind of switch what it's following. And now if we want, we could loosen up. We could kind of loosen this up, add a little tolerance, and you can see that it's still physically simulating. So then if we go back with the hand, then it kind of sticks there. It is interesting. It seems like this connected anchor is local because you can notice that the sphere isn't like dropping under in the same way that it was before. It's interesting. But of course, once you give it enough leeway, it will bounce all over the place. But yeah, so that is a demo of how I would approach that probably if I was making a game where there's some physics object that's following one object and then it switches which object it's following, but it still needs to be doing physics. Yeah.
Perfect. Great job. Oh my gosh, today we're really getting down to colliders.
Yeah, GDC has me pumped. I can't wait to do a game jam sometime.
Ooh, yeah, guys. We have, I think in about a month or so, a game jam coming up, and for a chance for you to win $10,000, and it's going to be announced on the Effect House website. So definitely go check it out. But I'm personally also very excited. You have learned so much about 3D colliders and gaming and create a gaming effect that you will be able to stand amongst all of the competitors and destroy them with your collider knowledge. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see. I hope this was useful to some of the people watching, and I hope you find some way to use some of these different techniques because they are super useful in a lot of different ways.
we have one more final question. I know we're already running so late, but can I ask this quick question? Joseph has been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Joseph Suchan is asking, Happy Wednesday! Happy Wednesday to you as well. Here's hopefully a quick question. What is the most effective way to attach a camera to a 3D object that has physics applied to it? Basically, the camera following an object as it moves around. My first thought was to assign a variable for the object's position and assign that var, I think variable, to
Yeah.
set camera position, maybe with some math to offset a few of the axes so it's not super close to the object.
Yeah, let's take a look at one of my favorite templates that I worked on for probably a little too long whenever some of these 3D physics things first came out. Desert Dash.
Okay, someone was actually in the chat saying they love Dessert Dash earlier. I was gonna tell you, but I just
Oh,
got
nice.
so focused on your tutorials that I was like, oh, and then I forgot to mention. But they said they specifically loved the Dessert Dash, and I was like, yeah, August is very proud of that.
You know what I think it needs? I've noticed a lot of people, I think that it's a little too stylized to where like
Mm.
not everybody wants to make a game about candy rolling around on cake. So I was thinking maybe I wonder if there's a way for us to just like make the textures very replaceable. Kind of like did you ever see
Mm.
Minecraft Steve? Like they provided just like this super unfolded box so that you could literally just color each like one square as his face, one square as
I
his
think
shirt.
that is a very good feedback because candy cane is a very niche
Yeah, yeah.
3D object.
So if there was a way for people to personalize the look of it, I think people would maybe
Mm.
be a little bit more into it. So I've been thinking about that a little bit. Yeah, we'll continue to think about
Good retroactive feedback. Let's do it.
it.
I think one thing that I would personally want is right now, like on the background, like it just shows your face like so like in 4K. And sometimes I want that kind of like a nice blur to make it look like professional. So an ability to turn on like a little bit of a blur or have like your face on the corner, but the rest of the screen is things like that.
Yeah, fun fact, I added like a kind of a tilt shift kind of blur to make it look like you're a
Oh.
giant in the background at first. Um,
Oh.
but for templates, we have such strict requirements for it to run
Yeah.
super
Mhm.
fast. And that's so that people can add a bunch of other features and still
Mhm.
pass QA, still
Mhm.
pass, still whatever we're calling it. So
Maybe we need to have a version 1.2 where you can download like ones with the custom assets, or at least like provide it as a um, something that they could drag and drop into their project, and then you'll be able to use that feature, because I bet that is like super useful.
yeah. Okay, so I know this question was like pretty straightforward, and it sounds like Joe knew what he was basically knew what I would basically do. But here is an example of how we do. This is like if you want to take it to the next level, um, an example in Desert Dash of how the camera works. So basically, how it starts is you can see there is a camera Z offset. That's just so we can expose that parameter to the front subgraph, so people can change it without going in here. So that's what a lot of these values are. But these are like the values that I've decided. Like in the Z, I want the camera to be 25 distant units back away from the ball, and on the Y, I want it to be 8 units above. And so you could also just hard code these values. And then basically all we're doing is on start, we're setting that position, and you can see that the camera is on this. It's a little complex. You could probably do a simpler version, but basically it's on an object, so that you can rotate the camera vertically and on the Y. And then you can move that object around without worrying about having to rotate it, basically. So that's why you have two, so that you can have like one object that follows and another object that rotates. So then you can kind of keep those axes separate. So that's kind of what we do there. So on start, we just set them. We set these values so that we don't have to tilt at all during the game. And then all you do after that is just move this ball follower. This is another ghost object, exactly what I was just showing you guys from the last one. This ball follower on update, we just set the position, and we'll just add the that height offset to the position of the actual ball. So that's what keeps it 8 units above. And then from there, we do, if you want it to rotate with the object, which a lot of games you don't need to. If you look at like Bartel's crazy racing games where the guy is like riding a chicken, the camera doesn't rotate. It just stays facing straight, and so you don't need it to move left and right. But for this game, I really, I feel like I wanted to give people the option to have a rotating camera, because it makes it like you could explore an area rather than just race through it really fast. So yeah, if you ever wanted to make a game where the camera doesn't rotate right and left, you can just kind of turn this whole section, last part, off here. But yeah, it's pretty fun to come up with these ideas. Let me know if this solves your problem, or if this was like what you're already doing and you just wanted to check if that's the kind of the right way according to other people. Yeah, I hope that works.
Okay, sounds great. I was just stretching this window seal, even though it is beautiful outside. It hurts my butt very much, so I was just taking a little stretch, guys. Okay, everyone, thank you so, so, so much for coming today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Let me make sure that the audio is on. I don't want people to tell me that my audio is off again. Yeah. But I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you, August, for breaking down so many fun game projects today. I think being at GDC is really inspiring you to be an indie game developer / AR game developer. And I will have a video for us by our creator Jonathan up soon, so you guys can also hear all of his amazing tips. So don't forget to come back to our YouTube channel. And August is going to be sharing some of the project files that he created, so keep an eye on our Discord channel as well. Have a great rest of your day. If you have any more questions, come ask it in our Discord and we'll answer it in the next slide. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.